Hey guys, welcome to my discussion video on One Piece. Now right off the bat I want to say there will not be any major spoilers in this video because one of the main points of this video is to get more people interested into the story of One Piece. There will be a few minor spoilers here or there. I will be mentioning some names of characters who get introduced and some places they go every now and then, but if you haven't gotten into One Piece yet, then I'd say you're fine. So this will be a discussion on part 1 of One Piece, or the first half. For those who don't know, One Piece is basically split into two parts. The first part is chapters 1 to 597, or the end of the Paramount War arc. And part 2 is everything after that, up until the end of the series, and God only knows when that'll get here. So I decided the best way to talk about part 1 of One Piece is to go by story arc. Now there are 8 story arcs in part 1, so I'm going to be going through all of them and giving you my thoughts and opinions on them. It's also worth mentioning that I myself am not fully up to date with One Piece. I am on volume 63 right now. As I continue reading, I will be giving you my opinions on everything that's been going on up until I am up to date, and once I am up to date, I will start doing weekly chapter reviews like I am with Fairy Tail. So first up, we have the arc that started it all, East Blue. Now, personally, I really like East Blue. Compared to the rest of the story, it's nothing spectacular, even compared to other manga, because it is the start of the series. We get introduced to all the characters. We get introduced to Luffy and Zoro and Nami and Usopp and Sanji. And One Piece is known for having some really dark and sad backstories. So right from the beginning, we really get attached to these characters, which is really awesome about East Blue. And it also sets up one of the themes of One Piece, which is adventure. There is a lot of adventure in East Blue, and it's really awesome. They don't stay in one place for too long. Every couple of volumes they're moving on, going meeting new people, fighting new foes, and it's awesome. Now if you start reading East Blue and you find out you're not really liking it that much, wait until you get to about volume 9. Because that is when this series goes from good to great. Once you get to the Erlong Park stuff, that is when things get intense, and it is really awesome. Also, the end of this arc when they're at Rogue Town, that is a good way to end the arc. That is a awesome way to end the arc. So after reading East Blue, I found myself really enjoying it, but I wasn't quite sure what the fuss was all about. While I did like East Blue, I mean, so many people have always been talking about how great and amazing One Piece is, and I kinda didn't really see it with East Blue. But once I got to Baroque Works, oh man, my opinions changed. Baroque Works took everything that was great about East Blue and multiplied it by 1,000. Not only was there also a lot of adventure, going to a bunch of different islands, meeting a bunch of new people, we got to meet Chopper, who's one of my favorite characters, but we also got this crazy epic story about a civil war in a country that's been corrupted. We get to meet Vivi, who is one of the best characters in the series, and we get to meet Crocodile, who is one of the most amazing villains in anything I have ever seen. Crocodile is such a badass, and he's friggin' insane. This is really when I started to realize what the fuss was all about. The final volumes in Baroque Works, I just marathoned. I marathoned like the last 5 or something, because I could just not put it down. It got super intense, all the battles going on, the huge war in the desert. It was insane, and I did not expect it at all, when I first started the series. But that's not all. We also got Luffy's brother, and we got a bunch of other great characters, and I know I'd mentioned Chopper and I kind of breezed past him, but Chopper's backstory, man. Like, if you're not up to date yet and you've thought some of the other backstories were sad, wait until you see Chopper's. That is honestly like some of the saddest stuff I've ever read. So after the conflict with the Baroque Works, we move on to Skypiea. Now I'm gonna be honest, Skypiea is my least favorite arc out of the 8 story arcs in part 1. But first I will talk about the things I liked. I really like how this arc started. Of course, we have Luffy's fight with Bellamy. We get introduced to Blackbeard and Doflamingo, who weren't really important at the time, but are now incredibly important characters. I also really like the villain of this arc. The climax was intense, and I really, really enjoyed the backstory of the characters from this arc. But it's the middle of this arc that I don't really care for. I found maybe the middle 3 volumes or so of this arc to be, well, boring. I can't really explain why I found it boring, which is weird, because there was still action, and there was still, the normal One Piece stuff, but it just didn't feel right for some reason. Now, other people may completely disagree with me. For some people, Skypiea is the best arc. And while I don't see it, I'll definitely respect everyone else's opinions. But if you don't really enjoy Skypiea like me, just know that it gets better. It gets much, much better. Because after Skypiea, there is Water 7. Now before Water 7, as much as I already loved One Piece, I still really didn't understand why people considered One Piece to be one of the greatest stories in manga. Then I read Water 7. So in this arc, not only do we get introduced to even more characters that we grow attached to, but we also get to see some more insane fights, and the world just keeps expanding and getting bigger. That's one of the things I love about One Piece. The world building is incredible. By the end of this arc, we really understand just how big the world of One Piece is. This is also the arc where things really start to change. We learn about the admirals of the Navy. Luffy also gains some new powers, which may or may not have been the inspiration for my channel name. Also, we get one of the most awesome prison break-ins ever. But the thing that makes Water 7 stand out is the very end of the arc. Volume 45 to be exact, which in my opinion is one of the best single volumes of manga I have ever read, because it's at this point that you realize that everything in One Piece is connected. Because there is a massive plot reveal in this volume. Like I said, I'm not going to give everything away, but basically it solves a mystery that has been in the series since almost the very beginning. And it's kind of insane. I remember after I read this volume, I actually had to go back to some of the first volumes and reread some of it, just so I could understand what was really happening. And once I realized it, I gained like this new respect for One Piece. I realized just how amazing the story in this series is, and why so many people consider it to be one of the best stories in manga. But the greatness does not stop there, because now we have Thriller Bark. So Thriller Bark wasn't as good as Water 7, but at this point it was kind of hard because, you know, everyone's mind was just blown and now we're doing some weird thing with ghosts. But overall I enjoyed it. I really liked some of the characters they introduced. Gecko Moria, he's friggin' insane. It was also a shorter arc, so, you know, it was just like, you know, a more fun little ride before some really big insane stuff starts to happen. We also, near the end, get introduced to Bartholomew Kuma, who at the time is one of the more interesting and mysterious characters in the series, because no one was really sure what he is. Once that's out of the way, we move on to Sabaody, which is pretty much the start of the build-up towards the climax of Part 1. Now this arc's pretty short, but there's a lot to it. We get a lot of crazy fights. Again, we are introduced to more characters who are awesome and who we care about. Silvers Rayleigh is friggin' the most badass person that ever badassed. Also, how this arc ends was really unexpected, because you think the story is going in one direction, but it completely turns around and goes in another direction, which I really love. I mean, if I was reading Thriller Bark and someone told me what happens a few volumes down, I honestly wouldn't believe them. So after the wacky end to Sabaody, we get Impel Down, which is of course another break-in arc, but Impel Down is absolutely fantastic. This arc is just a non-stop thrill ride. It's amazing. There's so many great villains, so many great fights. We get introduced to Jinbei, who's one of my favorite characters. And, of course, without giving anything away, we get to see some characters who we have not seen in a very, very, very long time. Again, bringing up the point that everything in One Piece feels connected. Like, characters who are relevant, like in Volume 1. Stay relevant, even if you haven't seen them for 30 volumes. There is always a possibility that they will come back and play a major role in the story. And it's just incredible how Oda can plan things out like this. Like, One Piece has been going on for 18 years now, yet some of the things in the story must have been planned out for years. The way everything just comes together is excellent, it's amazing. But of course, you can't talk about One Piece being amazing without talking about the final arc in Part 1, the Paramount War. So, Paramount War. This is arc in One Piece. It is also the only arc that I read all of in one night. So like I just said, it kind of is hard for a lot of people to talk about how amazing One Piece is without talking about the Paramount War. The battles were amazing, they were epic. Again, so many new characters. There were so many characters in One Piece, and I can remember like every single one of them. That is how great the story is. We also get some of the most emotional scenes in the series, and we also finally get some more insight into Luffy's backstory. Because even though he's the main character of the entire series, he was probably the one person that we knew the least about his backstory. And of course, the way this arc ends and transitions into part 2 is perfect, and I honestly couldn't have seen it end any other way. So that was my discussion video on One Piece. Feel free to talk about One Piece in the comments, and if you haven't gotten into One Piece yet, I really hope this video convinces you to check it out, because even though it's really long, it's really an amazing experience that I think everyone should at least try. So thanks for watching, and I will see you guys tomorrow for another discussion video, this time on Attack on Titan.